Don't let it dominate your lives. Get out there. President Trump's message to Americans as he returns to the White House after spending 3 nights in a military hospital getting treatment for coronavirus. NATO joins Russia, the US and France in calls for an unconditional ceasefire. This as fighting escalates between Armenia and Azerbaijan over the disputed territory of Nagorno-Karabakh. And the French capital shuts bars and cafes for 2 weeks as hospitals in the Paris region sees a spike in coronavirus patients. Authorities saying the epidemic is moving too fast. You're watching France 24. I'm Julia Kim. Now first, returning maskless and contagious to the White House, President Donald Trump has tweeted a new video. In it, he tells the American public not to let coronavirus dominate their lives and to, quote, get out there. The virus has killed more than 200,000 people in the US, making it the worst hit country in the world. Here's an excerpt of that video.
Don't let it dominate. Don't let it take over your lives. Don't let that happen. We have the greatest country in the world. We're going back to work. We're going to be out front. As your leader, I had to do that. I knew there's danger to it, but I had to do it. I stood out front. I led. Nobody that's a leader would not do what I did. And I know there's a risk, there's a danger, but that's okay. And now I'm better, and maybe I'm immune. I don't know.
Well, President Trump left the Walter Reed Medical Center after 3 days of treatment for COVID-19. He'll be given around-the-clock care at the White House. Luke Schrago has more.
Leaving the hospital where he'd been receiving medical treatment, Donald Trump headed back to the White House. It was a relief for his supporters, who turned out over the weekend, initially fearing the worst.
I want the president to know he has our support. If he's sick, we're going to support him, in his re-election, and we have prayers for him.
I think that this good energy will give him energy to heal quicker. I really do believe in the power of the mind.
Our president is one of the hardest working, pro-American presidents we've ever had, right up there with Ronald Reagan. And I believe that just like, sadly, when Reagan was shot, the country came together, but not so much this time.
However, when the US president had earlier tweeted that he'd be leaving the hospital's care, he also told Americans not to fear the virus that has already killed more than 200,000 of their compatriots. It suggests Trump hasn't changed his offhand attitude towards COVID-19, even as doctors stated that it was still early days and that he may not yet have entered a second phase of infection.
What we've learned over the last few months is that after 7 to 10 days, patients can sometimes take a turn for the worst. Depending on the timeline of events, I think his doctors are going to keep a very close eye on him, and because he's not out of the woods yet.
Meanwhile, White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany released a statement on Monday that she too had tested positive for COVID-19, putting a new point on how widely the virus has spread in the upper echelons of American power, inside an administration that's frequently downplayed risks and ignored precautions aimed at slowing the coronavirus pandemic.
Well, France 24's Washington correspondent Ketavan Gorgistani has more details on what we know so far on the president's physical condition.
3 days after being taken to Walter Reed Hospital, Donald Trump has returned to the White House, saying that he will soon be back on the campaign trail. Meanwhile, many questions remain about the exact status of the president's health. In a press briefing shortly before Donald Trump was released from Walter Reed, his physician said that the president's health was steadily improving, but he refused to answer several key questions, including about any possible lung damage to the president, as well as when the president last tested negative for COVID-19. And that's important because it will determine how long exactly Donald Trump has to isolate at the White House, and also how long he will need to be monitored for any possible relapses, with Dr. Conley warning that the president may not be entirely out out of the woods just yet. But with less than a month left before the November 3rd election, Donald Trump really wanted to reassure his supporters, tweeting that they should not be afraid of COVID-19 and that they should not let it dominate their lives. This as the United States reaches 210,000 deaths from the coronavirus. The ultimate goal, though, for President Donald Trump is to be fully back in shape for that second presidential debate, which is scheduled on October 15th.
Well, moving on now, Russia, the United States and France have urged for an unconditional ceasefire as fighting rages between Armenia and Azerbaijan. The two neighbors shelling major cities in an escalation of their conflict over the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region. Hundreds have been killed in clashes involving artillery, tanks and fighter planes since September the 27th. Meanwhile, NATO has also joined the call for a peaceful resolution to the 30-year conflict. James Fazina has the latest.
The clashes in Nagorno-Karabakh enter their second week, and as neither Armenia nor Azerbaijan seem prepared to back down, NATO's calling on Turkey to exercise its influence in the region.
We are deeply concerned by the escalation of hostilities. All sides should immediately cease fighting and find a way forward towards a peaceful resolution. And I expect Turkey to use its considerable influence to calm tensions.
Turkey has denied being involved in the fighting, but with both sides accusing each other of targeting civilians in the separatist region, Ankara has thrown its weight behind Azerbaijan, its longtime ally.
Everyone, and especially NATO, must call on Armenia to withdraw from these territories. These last days, Armenia started launching missiles on Ganja and other areas near Baku, clearly targeting civilians. This is a war crime.
But the fighting has also spilt over borders. Neighbouring Iran has lashed out at the two adversaries after stray rockets hit villages in the northwest of the Islamic Republic.
We have told our friends in both capitals, Baku and Yerevan, to be extra cautious and take utmost care. Any aggression against the borders of the Islamic Republic, even inadvertently, is a very serious red line for the Islamic Republic that should not be crossed.
Tehran says it's worked up a ceasefire plan to end the conflict. Other foreign powers have also called for an immediate halt to the fighting, including the United States, France and Russia.
Well, France 24's Catherine Norris-Trent is viewing this conflict unfold from the Azeri side. She had this update from the capital, Baku.
I am in the town of Mingachevir, which is in northern Azerbaijan. And here overnight, last night, 3 rockets were fired at this city. 2 of them were intercepted and shot down by Azerbaijan's air defense system. But one of those rockets landed right in the middle of a very important strategic point here, a huge hydroelectric power plant which supplies power to more than 40 cities and districts in Azerbaijan. So a very sensitive point, as you can imagine. Now, that rocket that landed there did not explode, but we were taken to see some of the damage there, and it was just meters away from some of those very important installations. And the authorities here on the Azerbaijan side are saying that they are being targeted by forces in Nagorno-Karabakh who are firing on various towns and cities which are well inside their territory, well away from the front lines of this conflict with Nagorno-Karabakh. We also ourselves this morning saw the aftermath of rockets fired on the town of Barda, which is around 20 kilometers away from the border. And the day before that, we went to Azerbaijan's second largest city, Ganja, where we saw the devastation caused in residential areas by rocket fire there.
Well, turning now to France, and from this Tuesday, bars and cafes in Paris and its surrounding suburbs will close for 15 days. Restaurants, though, will be allowed to stay open, providing they step up hygiene measures. Around 5,000 new infections were confirmed over the past 24 hours in France, a sharp drop from Saturday's record of some 17,000. But the death toll is accelerating, and over a third of intensive care patients in the Paris region have COVID-19. Ellen Gainsford has more.
It's last orders for a while for this Paris bar. While the announcement instructing bars to close this Tuesday wasn't a surprise, it's still a blow for the owner, who's already lost 60,000 euros in turnover.
Ça fait qu'on ne dort pas bien, ça fait qu'on a du mal à se projeter, ça fait qu'on essaye de garder la tête haute, ça fait qu'on essaye d'être citoyen, mais ça devient insupportable.
Bars in the Paris region are to close for at least 15 days, but restaurants are allowed to stay open. This cafe owner thinks the decision is unfair.
Puis continuer à servir les gens assis pour boire autant que pour manger, je vois pas bien la différence. C'est ça un peu qu'on trouve injuste par rapport à d'autres endroits où les gens ont encore le droit de se rassembler avec de la proximité.
This brasserie by the Gare du Nord will also stay closed, despite the fact the owner could continue to serve meals.
On n'a pas assez de touristes. Si c'est pour faire 25 couverts ou 40 couverts, c'est pas intéressant financièrement. Il va falloir changer de métier.
Restaurants are also having to adapt to the stricter regulations. Tables are limited to 6 people, and there's no payment at the counter to prevent people from mingling. Customers will have to leave their contact details, a measure this restaurant owner has already put in place.
On estime que ça permet de tracer les cas contacts, ça permet de rappeler les clients qui ont été en contact avec quelqu'un qui était porteur.
Measures many restaurant owners find too extreme, fearing they'll lose further clients due to these new restrictions.
And that's it from us. There's more news coming up shortly. Stay tuned to France 24.